23 meters wide, 3 full floors. These were the dimensions that God gave to Noah. Direct, clear, and supernaturally specific. The divine order left no room for doubt. Make yourself an ark. And with that voice, one of the greatest works ever accomplished by human hands began. The Bible reveals the size of the ark, its materials, and its purpose. But to transform that order into wood, beams, and structure, Noah had to face gigantic challenges. Challenges that the text doesn't detail, but that any builder of the time would understand. And it all starts with what many ignore: the land. A structure that is 137 meters long cannot be erected just anywhere. It requires ample, firm, stable space away from dangerous slopes and near cypress forests that would serve as raw material. So imagine Noah walking across the land, analyzing the soil, observing the firmness of the earth, the proximity of the trees, the accessibility. No machines, no engineers, no maps, just discernment, practical wisdom, and faith. And when he found the ideal location, he began the first stage. And it was anything but glorious. Remove large stones to uproot deep roots. Level every meter. Compacting the soil to support tons of wood. All with simple tools, but with a determination driven by the Word. But there was something that made the job even more challenging in the pre-flood world. The constant moisture rising from the earth. The Bible explains that a mist was rising from the earth and watering the whole surface of the ground. Genesis 2:6. This means that the soil was often moist by nature, and damp soil can turn to mud. Tools sink. Wood absorbs moisture. The ground becomes vulnerable. So Noah probably needed to dig small channels around the construction site, creating simple diversions so that the natural groundwater wouldn't saturate the work area. It wasn't rain falling from the sky, it was the earth itself releasing moisture. While he was doing this, people walked by and watched. Some people laughed, others whispered, "What's the point of preparing such a gigantic plot of land?" But Noah did not answer, because he didn't build using human logic. He built by following divine instruction. And when the ground finally became firm, flat, and dry enough, a new challenge arose before him: the collection of wood for a colossal structure. The Bible says, "Make the ark of cypress wood." And cypress trees were not small trunks. They were enormous, sturdy, heavy trees, ideal for a project of that magnitude. To fell a tree like that with rudimentary tools, only with strength, patience, and persistence. Take down hundreds? It was a process that required daily discipline. Blow after blow, trunk after trunk, Noah and his sons toiled until the crash of the falling tree echoed through the forest. But the service didn't end there. Moving a giant tree trunk to the construction site required skill. Without wheels, not enough animals, no machines, the solution was the same one used by ancient peoples: wooden rollers. Smaller logs were placed under the larger log. Using ropes and levers, they slowly pulled, moving tons of wood a few meters at a time. As the log moved forward, the rear rollers were repositioned to the front. This is it. Tiring. Risky. But each log carried was another step in building what God had ordained. And Noah continued, because those who have received instruction from God do not work by what they see. They work by what they believe. And while all this was happening, the residents nearby saw this unusual activity. men carrying enormous logs towards a gigantic plot of land. It was natural that many would mock, that others would doubt. But none of this deterred Noah, because he was not motivated by human eyes, but by the instruction that came from God. As the wood piled up on the site, it was time to begin the most complex part of the entire project. Not just cutting and transporting, but to erect a colossal structure who would need to remain steadfast during the greatest storm in human history. For the ark to remain firm, upright, and sturdy, Noah would need to start from the base, from the backbone of the entire vessel, the keel. The Bible doesn't describe the process, but any ancient builder would understand that a structure of that size required an extremely long and robust central beam, capable of supporting the entire weight of the hull, the 3 decks, and the tons of cargo that would come later. But there was one detail that could not be ignored. No tree, no matter how tall, could reach 137 meters in length. This means that Noah needed to join several giant beams, trunk after trunk, creating a continuous, straight, and solid line. A task that required skill, precision, and patience. These beams were cut and fitted with wooden joints, something known since the most ancient civilizations. Male and female systems that, when well made, became as sturdy as entire structures. And to secure these joints, stakes and pegs of hardwood were inserted, creating points of union strong enough to hold everything together in violent storms. When the keel was ready, an impressive moment unfolded before Noah: the need to erect the ribs from the ark. The ribs were arched beams that rose from the sides and gave shape to the hull. The ribs needed to be fitted together precisely. Therefore, Noah and his sons did what the ancient builders had mastered very well. They created carefully sculpted, custom-made fittings that allowed the beams to tilt and arch naturally as they were attached to the keel. And as these ribs rose up beside the keel, the shape of the ark finally began to emerge before their eyes. Now, imagine the scene. Huge, heavy beams being lifted by levers, thick ropes, and sheer human strength. Noah and his sons pulling, adjusting, correcting angles, observing every inch. Because if one rib were tilted too far, the entire structure would lose its balance. Therefore, they probably used ropes stretched from end to end as guidelines. They used stones as plumb lines to ensure verticality, and they repeated the process dozens of times. When the skeleton of the ark with it began to take shape, the view was going to be impressive. A gigantic wooden structure emerging where there had never been a sea, the size of a modern building, but made only with simple tools and human hands. And then came a crucial moment to seal the ark. Because a beautiful structure is not enough. It needed to be waterproof. And God was straightforward about it. You shall cover the ark inside and out with pitch. This detail is profound. Bitumen, a resin derived from the earth, needed to be boiled, thickened, and applied while still hot, creating a hard and resistant film. But applying it only externally wouldn't be enough. Over time, wood absorbs moisture, and any infiltration could destroy everything. So Noah and his sons spent days, perhaps weeks, covering every crack, every joint, every crevice, both inside and out. Each layer needed to dry before another was applied, and any mistake could jeopardize the entire project. Finally, when the last part was sealed and hardened, the ark was no longer just a wooden structure. It was an airtight shelter, designed to withstand something that had never happened before in the history of mankind.
Attention homeowners, listing your home on the market isn't the only way to sell your house.
Before in the history of mankind. And the next step would be just as important as the external structure. Organize the interior to house living creatures. The Bible reveals a fundamental detail. You shall make compartments in the ark. The Hebrew term used, my vagina, literally means nests, cells, small divisions. In other words, the ark was not an open shed. It was made up of smaller sections, carefully planned to maintain order, security, and stability during the flood. And here is an important theological point. The Bible doesn't describe the layout. It only states that there was 1 3-floor sand compartments. Based on this, we can imagine what would be logical, practical, and possible for Noah. To maintain the vessel's balance, the most sensible approach would be to organize the animals by weight and size. Lower level, heavy animals. Elephants, hippos, large bovines. This would keep the center of gravity low, preventing dangerous oscillations. Intermediate floor, medium-sized animals. Lions, bears, deer, larger domestic animals. Upper floor, birds and smaller animals. Lighter weight, less impact on balance, and closer to the ventilation system. This division does not contradict the Bible and is entirely consistent with such a large structure. The compartments were essential. Without them, predators could attack prey. Animals could get hurt. There would be total chaos inside. Diseases would spread rapidly. So Noah probably built simple but strong enough inner walls to keep each species in its own space. These walls needed to fit together well, without compromising the integrity of the hull. Bearing in mind that each piece of wood added weight and needed to be planned. Ventilation. The Bible mentions, "You shall make a cubit-sized opening above."